Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Hello, Arabelle Nightingale here, back at it with another video about the Edu here. Let's get into the video. So where we left off in last episode, we were actually reading some Magic Treehouse, which is what we are going to continue. We were on chapter 3, which is where we're going to pick up. Jack opened his eyes. Sunlight slanted through the window. The treehouse was still high up in a tree, but it wasn't the same tree. "Where are we?" Annie said. She and Jack looked out the window. The pterodon was soaring through the sky. The ground was covered with ferns and tall grass. There was a winding stream, a sloping hill, and volcanoes in the distance. "I don't know where we are," Jack said. The pterodon glided down to the base of the tree. It landed on the ground and stood very still. "What just happened to us?" Annie said. "Well," Jack said, "I was looking at the picture in the book and you said, wow." At the picture in the book. "And you said, wow, I wish we could go to the time of the pterodons," Annie said. "Yeah, and then we saw a pterodon in the Frog Creek woods." Jack said, "Yeah. And then the wind got loud, and the treehouse started spinning," Annie said. "And we landed here," Jack and Annie said at the same time. "So that means," Jack said, "so that means what?" Annie said. "I don't know," Jack said. He shook his head. "None of this can be real." And he looked out the window again. "But he's real," she said. "He's very real." Jack looked out the window with her again. The pterodon was standing at the base of the tree like a guard. His giant wings were spread out on either side of him. "Hi!" Annie shouted. "Shh!" Jack said. "We're not supposed to be here." "But where is here?" Annie said. "I don't know," Jack said. "Hi, who are you?" Annie called to the pterodon. The creature just looked at her. "Are you nuts? He can't talk," Jack said, "but maybe the book could tell us." And this is when I send my mate home. Yeah, he's full. Hang on, gosh. There we go. Jack looked down at the book. He read the words under the picture. The flying reptile lived in the Cretaceous period. It vanished 65 million years ago with the dinosaurs. "That's impossible," Jack said. "We can't have gone to a time 65 million years ago." "Jack," Annie said, "he's nice." "Nice?" Jack said. "Yeah, I can tell." Annie said, "Let's go down to him." "Go down," Jack said. Annie started down the rope ladder. "Hey, come back," Jack said, but Annie kept going. "Annie, wait," Jack called. Annie dropped to the ground. She stepped boldly up to the ancient creature. Chapter 4. Henry. Jack gasped as Annie reached out her hand toward the pterodon. "Oh no," he thought. Annie was always trying to make friends with animals, but this was going too far. "Don't get too close to him, Annie," Jack shouted. Annie touched the pterodon's crest. She stroked his neck. She was talking to him. What in the world is she saying? Jack wondered. He took a deep breath. "Okay, go down too." It would be good to examine a pterodon. He could take notes like a scientist. Jack started down the rope ladder. When he reached the ground, he was only a few feet away from the creature. The pterodon stared at Jack. His eyes were bright color. "He's soft, Jack," Annie said. "He feels like Henry." Jack snorted. "He's no dog, Annie. Feel him, Jack," Annie said. Jack didn't move. "Don't think, Jack. Just do it," Annie said. Jack stepped forward. He reached out very cautiously. He brushed his hand down the creature's neck. Interesting, Jack thought. A thin layer of fuzz covered the pterodon's skin. Soft, huh? Annie said. Jack reached into his backpack and pulled out a book, a pencil and notebook. He wrote, "Fuzzy skin." "What are you doing?" Annie said. "Taking notes," Jack said. "We're probably the first people in the whole world to ever see a real-life pterodon." Jack looked at the pterodon again. The bony crest on top of his head was longer than Jack's arm. "I wonder how smart he is," Jack said. "Very smart," Annie said. "Don't count on it," Jack said. His brain's probably no bigger than a bean." "No, he's very smart. I can feel it," Annie said. "I'm going to call him Henry," Jack wrote in his notebook. "Small brain? Question mark?" Jack looked at the creature again. "Maybe he's a mutant," he said. The pterodon tilted his head. Annie laughed. "He's not a mutant, Jack." "Well, what's he doing here, then? Where is this place?" Jack said. Annie leaned closer to the pterodon. "Do you know where we are, Henry?" she asked softly. The creature fixed his eyes on Annie. His long jaws were opening and closing. Like a giant pair of scissors. "Are you trying to talk to me, Henry?" Annie said. "Forget it, Annie," Jack wrote in his notebook. "Mouth like scissors." Did we come to a time long ago, Henry?" Annie asked. "Is this a place from long ago?" Suddenly Annie gasped. "Jack!" Jack looked up. Annie was pointing toward the hill. On top stood a huge dinosaur. Random. I'll turn it on. Triceratops. They saw Triceratops. Go, Jack said. He threw his notebook into his backpack. He pushed Annie toward the rope ladder. "Bye, Henry," Annie said. "Go," Jack said. He gave Annie another push. "Quit it," she said. But she started up the ladder. Jack scrambled after her. Jack and Annie tumbled into the treehouse. They were panting as they looked out the window at the dinosaur. It was standing on the hilltop, eating flowers off a tree. "Oh man," Jack whispered. "We are in a time long ago." The dinosaur looked like a huge rhinoceros. Rhinoceros. There we go. With 3 horns instead of 1. It had 1 long horn above its eyes, and another one grew out from its nose. No, it had 2 long horns above its eyes, and another one grew out from its nose. It had a big shield-like thing behind its head. "Triceratops?" Jack said. "Does he eat people?" Annie whispered. "I'll look it up." Jack read the dinosaur book. He flipped through the pages. "There," Jack said, pointing to a picture of the Triceratops. He read the caption. The Triceratops lived in the late Cretaceous period. This plant-eating dinosaur weighed over 12,000 pounds. Jack slammed the book shut. "Just plants, not meat. No meat." "Good," Annie said. Let's go see him up close." "Are you crazy?" Jack said. "Don't you want to take notes about him?" Annie said. "We're probably the first people in the whole world to see a real-life Triceratops." Jack sighed. Annie was right. "Okay, let's go," he said. Jack shoved the dinosaur book into his backpack. He slung his pack over his shoulder. Annie started down the ladder, and Jack followed her. "Just promise you won't pet him," Jack called down to Annie. "I promise," Annie said. "Promise you won't kiss him," Jack said. "I promise," Annie said. "Promise you won't talk to him." "I promise," Annie said. "Promise you won't." "Don't worry," Annie said. Annie and Jack stepped off the ladder. The pterodon gave them a friendly look. Annie blew him a kiss. "Be back soon, Henry," she called. "Shh," Jack said. And he led the way slowly and carefully through the ferns. When Jack and Annie reached the bottom of the hill, they knelt behind a bush. Annie started to speak, but Jack quickly put his finger to his lips. Then he and Annie peeked out at the Triceratops. The dinosaur was bigger than a trunk. He was eating the flowers off a magnolia tree. Jack slipped his notebook out of his pack. He wrote, "Eats flowers." Annie nudged him. Jack ignored her. He studied the Triceratops who wrote, "Eat slowly." Annie nudged him harder. Jack looked at her. Annie pointed to herself. She walked her finger through the air. She pointed to the dinosaur, her smile. Is she teasing? Jack wondered. Annie waved to Jack. Jack started to grab her. She laughed and grabbed and jumped away. She fell into the grass in full view of the Triceratops. "Get back!" Jack whispered. Too late. The big dinosaur had spotted Annie. He gazed down at her from the hilltop. Half of the magnolia flowers was sticking out of his mouth. "Oops," Annie said. "Get back," Jack said again. "He looks nice, Jack," Annie said. "Nice? Watch out for his horns, Annie," Jack said. The Triceratops gazed calmly down at Annie. Then he turned and looked down the side of the hill. "Bye," Annie said. He turned back to Jack. "See?" Jack grunted. He wrote in his notebook, "Nice." "Come on, let's look around some more," Annie said. As Jack started after Annie, he saw something glittering in the tall grass. He reached down and picked it up. It was a golden medallion. A letter was engraved on the medallion, a fancy M. "Oh man, someone was here before us," Jack said softly. Chapter 6. "Annie, look at this," Jack called. "Look what I found." Annie had gone up the hilltop. She was picking a flower from the magnolia tree. "Annie, look, a medallion," Jack said, but Annie wasn't paying attention to Jack. She was staring at something on the other side of the hill. "Oh, wow," she said, clutching her magnolia flower. She took off down the hill. "Annie, come back," Jack shouted, but Annie had disappeared. "Oh, brother," Jack muttered. He stuffed the gold medallion into his pocket. Then Jack heard Annie shriek. "Annie," he said. Jack heard another sound as well, a deep bellowing sound like a tuba. "Jack, come here, quick," Annie called. Jack raced up the hill. When he got to the top, he gasped. The valley below was filled with nests, big nests made of mud. The nests were filled with tiny dinosaurs. Annie was crouching next to one of the nests. Towering over her was a gigantic duck-billed dinosaur. "Don't panic, don't move," Jack said. He stepped slowly down the hill toward Annie. The huge dinosaur was waving her arms and making her tuba sound. Jack stopped. He didn't want to get too close. He knelt to the ground. "Okay, move toward me slowly," he said. Jack started to stand up. "Don't stand, crawl," said Jack. Clutching her flower, Annie crawled toward Jack. Still bellowing, the duck-billed dinosaur followed her. Annie froze. "Keep going," Jack said. Annie started crawling again. Jack inched farther down the hill until he was just an arm's distance from Annie. He reached out and grabbed her hand. He pulled Annie toward him. "Stay down," Jack said. He crouched next to her. "Bow your head. Pretend to chew." "Chew?" said Annie. "Yes," said Jack. "I read that's what you do if a mean dog comes at you." "He's not a dog, Jack," Annie said. "Just chew," said Jack. Jack and Annie both bowed their heads and pretended to chew. Soon the dinosaur grew quiet. Jack looked up. "I don't think she's mad anymore," he said. "You saved me," said Annie. "Thanks." "You have to use your brain, Annie," said Jack. "You can't just go running to a nest of babies. There's always a mother nearby." Annie stood up. "Annie, don't," said Jack. Too late. Annie held out her magnolia flower to the dinosaur. "I'm sorry I made you worry about your babies," she said. The dinosaur moved closer to Annie. She grabbed the flower from her hand. She reached for another. "No more," Annie said. The dinosaur let out a sad tuba sound. "But there are flowers up there," Annie said, pointing to the top of the hill. "I'll get you some." We're close to the cliff, said me. Yes, we are. Annie hurried up the hill. The dinosaur waddled after her. Cute. Waddled after her. Jack quickly looked at the dinosaur babies. Some were crawling out of their nests. Where are the other mothers? Jack wondered. Jack took out the dinosaur book. He flipped through the pages. He found a picture of some duck-billed dinosaurs. He read the caption. The Anatosaurus lived in colonies with a few mothers. While a few mothers babysat the nests, others looked for food. There were probably more mothers close by for food. Hey, Jack, Annie called. Jack looked up. Annie was at the top of the hill, feeding magnolia flowers to the giant Anatosaurus. Guess what? Annie said. She's nice too. Suddenly, the Anatosaurus made her terrible tuba sound. Anna crouched down and started to chew. The dinosaur charged down the hill. She seemed afraid of something. Jack put the book on top of his pack. He hurried to enter. I wonder why she ran away, Annie said. We were starting to be friends. Jack looked around. What he saw in the distance almost made him faint. An enormous monster was coming across the plain. The monster was walking on two strong legs. It was swinging a long, thick tail and dangling two tiny arms. It had a huge head, and its jaws were wide open. Even from far away, Jack could see its long, gleaming teeth. "The Tyrannosaurus Rex," Jack whispered. Okay. And we're back. Chapter 7. Ready, set, go. "Run, Annie, run!" cried Jack. "Run to the treehouse!" Jack and Annie dashed down the hill. Together they ran through the tall grass and ferns and past the pterodon. They scrambled up the rope ladder and tumbled into the treehouse. Annie leapt to the window. "It's going away," she said, panting. Jack pushed his glasses into place. He looked out the window with Annie. The Tyrannosaurus was wandering off. The monster stopped and turned around. "Duck!" Jack said. The two of them ducked their heads. After a long moment, they peeked out the window again. "Coast clear," Jack said. "Yay!" Annie whispered. "We have to get out of here," Jack said. "We made a wish before," Annie said. "Right," Jack said. Took a deep breath. "I wish we could go back to Frog Creek." Nothing happened. I said I wish. Jack said. "Wait," Annie said. "You were looking at a picture of the dinosaur book, remember?" "Oh no, I left the book and my pack on the hill," Jack said. "I have to go back." "Forget it," Annie said. "I can't," Jack said. "The book doesn't belong to us. Plus my notebook with all my notes is in my pack. And my... Okay, said Annie. "I'll hurry," said Jack. He climbed quickly down the ladder and leapt to the ground. Jack raced past the pterodon, through the ferns, through the tall grass, and up the hill. He looked down. His pack was lying on the ground. On top of it was the dinosaur book. But now the valley below was filled with Anatosauruses. They were all standing guard around the nest. Where had they been? Did fear of the Tyrannosaurus send them home? Jack took a deep breath. "Ready, set, go," he thought. He charged down the hill. He ran to his backpack, scooped it up. He grabbed the dinosaur book. He heard a terrible tuba sound, then another and another. All the Anathosauruses were bellowing at him. Jack took off. He raced up the hilltop. He started down the hill. He stopped. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was back. It was standing between Jack and the treehouse. Wait, hang on. Reset. I have not read these books in forever. Chapter 8, A Giant Shadow. Jack jumped behind the magnolia tree. His heart was beating so fast he could hardly think. He peeked out at the giant monster. The horrible-looking creature was opening and closing its huge jaws. Its teeth were as big as steak knives. Don't panic, Jack thought. Think. He peered down the valley. Good, the duck-billed dinosaurs were sticking close to their nests. Jack looked back at the Tyrannosaurus. Good, the monster still didn't seem to know he was there. Don't panic. Think. Maybe there's information in the book. Jack opened the dinosaur book. He found Tyrannosaurus Rex. He read Tyrannosaurus Rex was one of the largest meat-eating land animals of all time. If it were alive today, it could eat a human in one bite. And that's like talking full grown. Great, Jack thought. The book was no help at all. Jack tried to think clearly. He couldn't hide on the other side of the hill. The Anathosauruses might stampede. He couldn't run to the treehouse. The Tyrannosaurus might run faster. Maybe he should just wait for the monster to leave. Jack peeked around the tree. The Tyrannosaurus had wandered closer to the hill. Something caught Jack's eye. Annie was coming down the rope ladder. She nuts? What is she doing? Jack wondered. Jack watched Annie hop off the ladder. Annie hurried over to the pterodon. She was talking to him. She was flapping her arms. She pointed at Jack, at the sky, and at the treehouse. She is nuts, Jack thought. Go back to the tree, Jack whispered. Go! Jack heard a roar. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was looking in his direction. Jack hit the ground. The Tyrannosaurus Rex was coming toward the hill. Jack felt the ground shaking. What should I do? Jack wondered. Should I run? Crawl back into Dinosaur Valley? Climb the magnolia tree? Suddenly, a giant shadow covered Jack. He looked up. The pterodon was gliding overhead. The gigantic creature sailed toward the top of the hill. He was heading toward Jack. Hang on. Missed the scent post. Chapter 9. The Amazing Ride. The pterodon coasted down to the ground. He stared at Jack with his bright, alert eyes. What was Jack supposed to do? Climb on? But I'm too heavy, Jack thought. He looked at the Tyrannosaurus Rex. It was starting up the hill. Its gigantic teeth were flashing in the sunlight. Okay, Jack thought. Don't think, just do it. Jack put his book in his pack. Then he climbed onto the pterodon's back. He held on tightly. The creature moved forward. He spread his wings and lifted off the ground. Jack nearly fell off as they teared this way and that. The pterodon steadied himself and rose into the sky. Jack looked down. The Tyrannosaurus was staring at him and chomping the air. The pterodon glided away. He sailed over the hilltop and over the valley. He circled above all the duck-billed dinosaurs and the nests filled with babies. Then the pterodon soared out over the plain, over the Triceratops who was grazing in the grazing in the high grass. Jack felt like a bird. The wind was rushing through his hair. The air smelled sweet and fresh. He whooped and laughed. He couldn't believe it. He was riding on the back of an ancient flying reptile. The pterodon sailed over the stream and over the ferns and brushes. Then he carried Jack down to the base of the oak tree. When they came to a stop, Jack slid off the creature's back and landed on the ground. The pterodon took off again and glided into the sky. "Bye, Henry," Jack called. "Jack, are you okay?" And he shouted from the treehouse. Jack pushed his glasses into place. He kept staring at the pterodon. "Jack!" Annie called. Jack looked at Annie. He smiled. "Thanks for saving my life," he said. "That was really fun." "Thank Henry, not me," Annie said. "Come on, climb up." He tried to stand. His legs were wobbly. He felt a bit dizzy. "Hurry," Annie said. Annie shouted, "It's coming." Jack looked around. The Tyrannosaurus was headed straight toward him. Jack bolted to the ladder. He started climbing. "Hurry, hurry!" screamed Annie. Jack reached the top and scrambled into the treehouse. "It's coming toward the tree," Annie cried. The dinosaur slammed against the oak tree. The treehouse shook like a leaf in the wind. Jack and Annie tumbled into the books. "Make a wish to go home," Jack cried Annie. "We need the book, the Pennsylvania book," said Jack. "Where is it?" They both searched madly around the treehouse. "Found it," said Jack. He grabbed the book and flipped through the pages. He found the photograph of Frogleaf Woods. He pointed to the picture. "I wish we could go home," he shouted. The wind began to blow. Jack closed his eyes. He held on tightly to Annie. The treehouse started to spin. It spun faster and faster. Then everything was still. Absolutely still. We've got one more chapter to this book, and then the book is going to be over, and then next 2 episodes, there's going to be another book. So, yeah, I feel like I can get through these books pretty fast. Mostly because I know these books a lot. Because our teacher used to read them to me. To us. My old teacher. Home. Chapter 10. Home Before Dark. Jack heard a bird singing. He opened his eyes. He was still pointing at the picture of the Frog Creek Woods. He peeked out the treehouse window. Outside, he saw the exact same view as the picture in the book. "We're home," Annie whispered. The woods were lit with a gold late afternoon light. The sun was about to set. No time had passed since they'd left Frog Creek. "Jack! Annie!" a voice called from the distance. "That's Mom," Annie said. Jack saw their mother far away. She was standing in the front of their house. She looked tiny. "Annie! Jack!" she called. Jack stuck her head out the window and shouted, "Coming!" Jack still felt dazed. He just stared at Annie. "What happened to us?" he said. "We took a trip in the magic treehouse," Annie said simply. "But it's the same time as when we left," Jack said. Annie shrugged. "How did it take us so far away?" said Jack. And so long ago." "We looked at a picture in the book and said, You looked at a picture in the book and said you wished to go there," Annie said. "And the magic treehouse took us there." "But how?" Jack said. "And who built this magic treehouse? Who put all these books here?" "A magic person, I guess." Annie said. "Oh, look," said Jack. "I almost forgot about this." Jack reached into his pocket and pulled out the gold medallion. "Someone lost this back there," Annie said, "in Dinosaur Land. Looks like a letter M. There's a letter M on it." Annie's eyes got round. "You think M stands for magic person?" she asked. "I don't know," Jack said. I know something went to that place before us." "Jack! Annie!" Their mom called again. "Coming!" Annie shouted again. Jack put the gold medallion back in his pocket. He pulled the dinosaur book out of his pack and put it back with all the other books. Then he and Annie took one last look around the treehouse. "Goodbye, house," whispered Annie. Jack slung his backpack over his shoulders. He started down the rope ladder. Jack followed. Annie started down the rope ladder. Jack followed. Seconds later, they hopped onto the ground and started walking out of the woods. No one's gonna believe our story, Jack said. So let's not tell anyone, said Annie. Dad won't believe it, said Jack. He'll say it was a dream, Annie said. Mom won't believe it, said Jack. She'll say it was all pretend. Okay, we're gonna finish this book. And then we're gonna finish this. My teacher won't believe it, said Jack. She'll say you're nuts, said Annie. We'd better not tell anyone, said Jack. I already said that, said Annie. Jack sighed. I think I'm starting not to believe myself, he said. They left the woods and started up the road toward their house. As they walked past all the houses on their street, the trip to the dinosaur time did seem more and more like a dream. Only this world and this time seemed real. Jack reached into his pocket. He clasped the gold medallion. He felt the engraving of the letter N. It made his fingers tingle. Jack laughed. Suddenly he felt very happy. He couldn't explain what had happened today, but he knew for sure that their trip in the magic treehouse had been real. Absolutely real. Tomorrow, Jack said softly, we'll go back to the woods. Of course, Annie said. And we'll climb up the treehouse, said Jack. Of course, said Annie. And we'll see what happens next, said Jack. Of course, said Annie. Race you. And they took off together, running for home. So that was the end of the book, and it is also time to end off the video here, y'all. So if you guys did enjoy this video, then you might like others, please make sure you give this video a good old pause up and subscribe. Also, make sure you hit that bell notification so that way you don't miss any single time I upload. I really do hope you enjoy. I'll see you in the next one, and bye, guys!